My Hero Academia. It would be near impossible to find a single anime watcher who hasn't heard of the show. First serialized as a manga in Weekly Shonen Jump in 2014, written by Kohei Horikoshi, it went on to be screenlit for an anime adaptation under Bone Studio less than 2 years later in early 2016, and the rest was history. Spawning season after season, movie after movie, still with more in the works as we move on to season 7 and movie number 3, the series has reached acclaim across the world for its story depicting real superheroes fighting against villains. My Hero Academia continues to rise surely and steadily in manga sales and in popularity, yet something doesn't feel quite right. In a lot of circles, you'd find people saying,
"Where did My Hero go? Is that still airing?"
Or,
"Dude, that show fell off hard."
In fact, the way that Twitter and TikTok praise My Hero, or show a lack of praise, should I say, is exactly the opposite of what you'd expect from a series with, well, such shockingly consistent and outrageously high-performing statistics. I mean, they've passed 100 million manga sales, for God's sake. But new seasons of My Hero often just come and go. The ripples it makes across the vast pond that is the anime community seem to be so small, and yet when you look at it underneath the surface, it remains a monolith, an icon in the anime and manga industry that has not budged in years. We must look at how a show can grow, yet slowly fall out of the center stage of public discourse, how it can continue to garner more and more sales, viewership, and yet, in an era where dissemination of epic moments, scenes, fights, and stories is the most accessible and rampant it has ever been, we see so little of it with My Hero. Or at least, should I say, so little in proportion to what you would expect of a series this big. So I suppose the main question I'm both asking and attempting to answer here is, what happened to My Hero Academia? Aside from selling more manga volumes every year, growing in popularity, and steadily rising in acclaim, that is. And before you come in and say, hey, you're just a hater, no, I'm not. I've read the My Hero manga since 2018, and continue to thoroughly enjoy it despite having read it for, over half a decade now? I'm looking at things from an observational perspective, trying to take into account all sorts of factors. The superhero boom from the mid to late 2010s that gave My Hero a good boost to begin with, how the rise of other shows and manga in the later seasons may have overshadowed it. There's plenty to take into account here. But first, I think there is a very good comparison that can be made to understand this dichotomy, this deceptively complex form of popularity where My Hero may have gone quote-unquote wrong, if you could even call it that. The comparison being One Piece. Now, stay with me. Oricon, a Japanese corporate group that supplies statistics and information on music and manga, releases the top 10 of the best-selling manga every year in Japan. And these lists of the best-selling manga are often reflective to a degree of the popularity of their corresponding anime at the time too. For example, in 2019, the first season of Demon Slayer aired. The following year, in 2020, we see this effect trickle over. A better word is pour over, in this case, when their manga sales skyrocketed from 12 million to 82 million, selling 10 times more than the second highest selling manga. A very similar trend happened with Jujutsu Kaisen, which had its anime air in 2020, and, as a result, quintupled in sales in the Oricon report in 2021. Many manga have this very capricious habit of quickly blowing up or ending very unexpectedly, and huge series often come in and suddenly dominate the market in the blink of an eye, like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Spy Family. And despite all of this, in the past 8 years, 3 manga alone have firmly remained in the Oricon's top 10 selling every single year. One is Kingdom, my favorite manga and the most epic manga I've ever had the privilege of reading, and yes, this is my excuse to bring it up and promote it. The other 2, now, that have persisted in the top 10 for nearly the past decade are My Hero Academia and One Piece. So, what's my point? Well, let's take a look back, a retrospective. My Hero Season 2 had the most iconic fighting tournament arc we've had in anime in years. It had ups and downs, unexpected finishes, both good and bad, not to mention the fight with Stain later in the season, and great questioning of the purpose of a hero in a world where they are so oversaturated and what qualifies you as a hero. Season 3 was arguably My Hero's peak, and boy was it a magnificent one. Midoriya's fight with Muscular was perfectly written to combine great choreography and sentiment into one short fight. The Bakugo rescue arc was unique, and had all the tidbits of nostalgia you feel when you remember the Soul Society arc from Bleach and Sasuke rescue arc from Naruto. And the final battle between All Might and All for One, I mean, does a season get much better than that? I was standing there with my fist in the air just like him. But after it seemed that My Hero could only go up, Season 4 came a year after and disappointed on a lot of fronts. Censorship, overuse of still frames, and poor animation quality caused by Bones working on the new season and movie at the same time all came together to disappoint what had been a historic run for the anime. My Hero simply got a bit complacent. Now, I'll come back to this and the blue sky effect, but first, let me bring this back to the One Piece comparison. For many years leading up to One Piece's most recent big arc called Wano, as a longtime fan, watcher, reader of the series, I have to acknowledge that One Piece was not nearly as fervently praised in the public eye as it is, say, right now. The series arcs had become more and more drawn out in the anime by Toei Animation for the past 15 or so years. Animation, too, had taken severe hits the longer we continued on, and climaxed in many of the worst ways imaginable in the Whole Cake Island arc, where we saw both animation and pacing fight to see which could outdo the other in dragging down what is, on paper, in the manga, one of the greatest One Piece arcs out there. And yet, we are currently now living in a resurgence of universal love and appreciation for One Piece. The kind of undeniable love that, say, My Hero received during Season 2 and 3, or Attack on Titan received during Season 3, or very recently, Jujutsu Kaisen received during Season 2. How did a series that could be argued to have hit its lowest point quality-wise and in its level of praise has hit a peak now that it has never reached before? It's simple. Toei and the One Piece marketing team stepped up their game. Toei Animation promised a radically different animation style shift at the beginning of Wano, a much-needed resolution for longtime fans who had high expectations of the story contained in the climactic arc, but who were scared of how the studio would ruin it with lazy animation. Toei changed the music cues to match the Japanese samurai theme of the arc, started outsourcing to outside animators who revolutionized One Piece animation. Simultaneously, promotions surrounding One Piece Red, Gear 5th, even the boom of the One Piece card game have all pushed One Piece back into the spotlight, where, to be fair, it rightfully deserves to be. It always has, even though many years of what some might call a slower time, not that One Piece can ever be very died down, but the world wasn't showering praise a few years ago the way they do every week now. It brought in nearly as much attention in the US as Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, which, if you're online at all, you'd know was by far the most highly anticipated and talked about series this past year. And yes, I do know that One Piece is a huge series and it might feel unfair to compare them. Except I don't think it's unfair at all. Because now let's circle back to My Hero. Quite frankly, for the first 3 seasons of My Hero, it was definitely being talked about far more than One Piece was at the time. The popularity of the series was extraordinary for many years. I think it's actually good to compare these series, because both have been, above all else, consistent through the years. A new season of My Hero every year, and One Piece has been a weekly airing anime for a quarter century now. But My Hero has not had that resurgence that One Piece is having right now. That is the big difference. My Hero is experiencing that trough that One Piece was in, but One Piece has hit a peak. The manga is great, in my opinion. Horikoshi's art is simply not being translated as well into the anime, and to many viewers, his darkest and most epic frames are being cooked into still shots distilled by bright blue skies and a lack of dynamic movement. I couldn't even imagine One Piece being talked about as having the best animation out there a few years ago, and yet now it is easily fighting for the top spot in the discussion of this year's best animated show. As much as the world hates waiting for new anime seasons to air after multiple years, to be quite frank, My Hero could have benefited greatly from it. It's a risky move, and some shows prolonging the next season has hurt the show's reputation and anticipation among the fanbase, like with One Punch Man. But in many cases, the wait for the next season being at least more than a year tends to work wonders. Attack on Titan took 5 years, and then about 2 years at a time for each season and part after. Jujutsu Kaisen took 2 years with a movie in between. Demon Slayer did the same. But building anticipation alone isn't what makes waiting worth it. It also gives the studio time to breathe, to build up resources and take their time. And sometimes it's just the fresh new start the show needs. The My Hero anime isn't bad. As much as the world might want to tell you it is, it could just deliver on a few more improvements. Like playing around with color saturation to make the villains just seem a little more frightening, even if they're fighting in the middle of the day. Look, I have to admit, most of My Hero's best fights that I can remember take place during the nighttime. The Sting fight, Muscular, All for One and All Might, Deku and Bakugo. I don't think it's coincidence. Now, I'm not saying they have to abandon the daytime aspect of it all. It's more realistic for our superheroes to be battling it out on their turf in the daytime. But the effect that just something as simple as nighttime makes, darker settings, less lights, less joy, makes a huge difference in making a fight feel dangerous. And that's a big part of My Hero. It always has been. Since season 1, the moment that these underdeveloped young kids get pounced upon by an incredibly dangerous league of villains, in a place where they thought they could never be hurt. The villains are frightening and incredibly powerful, and you don't know who will come out on top in every fight. There's danger in every season, but it doesn't feel like that much for us as viewers anymore. The still shots, the cloud and blue skies, the censorship even, have just denied the series those opportunities to be talked about. You can have blue skies and have a good fight. There's more to it than just that. The series still retains fans, gains popularity, sells more, because the story is still fun and interesting. It is. But there's no Maharaga fights. No dramatic moments while our hero comes face to face with the villain once again. Those are what get talked about. And the My Hero anime simply stopped hitting these balls out of the park like it used to. That is what happened to My Hero Academia. But don't lose hope. We've seen it with One Piece. Don't give up until it's over. That's what Deku would do, right? I can't believe I just said that. Stick with it, and have faith that things can turn around. I sure hope so. As always, this has been the Anime Culture Corner. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future in-depth show, manga, and character analyses.